Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahushai. This is Rayabya from God, back with another breakdown dealing with the 12 tribes of Israel. In this breakdown, dealing with the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. All right, dealing with two tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. The Ephraimites being the so-called Puerto Ricans of today, the Indigenous and Puerto Ricans, Taino Indians, and the descendants thereof, all right, from the Isle of Puerto Rico, as well as the descendants of the Taino and Arawak Indians of the Isle of Cuba, okay, and the descendants thereof, all right. In the Hebrew word for Ephraim is aparium, okay, which means fruitful, as well as the word for Manasseh in the Hebrew is Manasseh, which means made to forget, okay. So I want to go into some names, because when you deal with the tribe of Ephraim, which is the tribe of Ephraim are the so-called Puerto Ricans today, the tribe of Manasseh are the so-called Cubans of today, the Taino and Arawak Indians, all right, these people, all right, on those particular islands. And of course, you know, the people that are from Puerto Rico, like I said, are the Ephraimite, are from the tribe of Ephraim, the Aborigines of and the descendants thereof from both Puerto Rico are from the tribe of Ephraim, the Aborigines and the descendants thereof of the Isle of Cuba, all right, are the tribe of Manasseh, all right. So the people of the Arawak and the Taino from those particular lands are, of course, Israelites from those respective tribes. Now, I want to go into this. Christopher Columbus and the participation the Jews in the Spanish and Portuguese discovery, all right, by Mayor Kaiserling, Slovakia, all right. I want to go into this because I just wanted to show that there's certain names, all right, associated with these two islands, all right. I'm gonna just go into it, but that are associated with these people on both of these islands that that prove that they're Israelites, all right. So first, I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to go to page I'm gonna go to this page right here, all right. Slovakia. Give me a quick second. So yeah, I wanted to start on this page right here, page 95, okay? Indians and Israelites, all right? So it says, in Cuba, Hispaniola, and other islands which he discovered, Columbus found natives who had their caciques, all right, which is their ruling leaders, all right, of those indigenous tribes, and their own language and traditions. To what race did these Aborigines of America belong? Several writers have asserted and have displayed much learning in an attempt to prove that the Aborigines were descendants of the Jews. This result was reached already in the 16th century by the Spanish clergyman Ronald. His argument were derived from an unpublished manuscript which he discovered in the library of Sao Paulo, Pablo in Seville. All right. Lakia. Montezino, who possessed the manuscript of Luis Lopez, the learned bishop of Quito, was convinced that the Peruvians were of Jewish origin. So, and that also includes Cuba and Puerto Rico. So, let me go ahead and go to this. All right. Indians and Israelites. So this is page 98 in this book. All right. Okay. It says Ronald Chief's argument in support of his view is the language of the Indians in Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, and the adjoining islands. He contends that it has many resemblance to Hebrew. In fact, he even calls it corrupted Hebrew. He asserts that such names as Cuba and Haiti are Hebrew, and that they were first applied by the earliest caciques, the chiefs or leaders, Cason, who discovered and peopled the islands. The names of the rivers of persons in use among the natives were derived from the Hebrew. For example, Hena from the Hebrew, Ain streams, Jonas from Jonah, Yaqua from Jacob, Yaqub, all right, for y'all that know the Hebrew, Arius in Urias, Sayabol from Seba, Macy from Moyasi, all right. So, point being though, these areas had the names of Hebrew, all right? These, in particular, Cuba and Haiti, all right, which is mentioned here. It said like Cuba and Haiti. Now, dealing with Cuba, all right, that word is definitely Hebrew. And I'm going to go and show that in the Strong's Concordance, all right? For brothers and sisters that understand the Strong's Concordance, the Old Testament being the ancient Paleo-Hebrew, or translated from the ancient Paleo-Hebrew, as well as the New Testament being translated from the Greek. So that's what the Strong's Concordance deals with these different dealing with the word in the Hebrew origin of that particular word that you see in the New English. So, all right. So this is Strong's H6898. Now remember, it said Cuba, right? Let me read this again in this book, page 90, Slovakia. All right. And page 98 real quick. He asserts that such Slovakia. It says right here. He contends that it has many resemblances to Hebrew. In fact, he even calls it corrupted Hebrew, which that's for like Haiti and Cuba. They're corrupted Hebrew, but they're Hebrew nonetheless. As I read on, he asserts that such names as Cuba and Haiti are Hebrew. So, dealing with Christopher Columbus and all these other Spanish and different people from Spain, they contended that this name, Cuba, and the many other islands, of course, but Cuba in particular, derived from Hebrew. Now, I'm going to show you right here, all right? Strong H, right? Strong's H 6898. And you can see clearly transliteration. Cuba. Cuba. A large vaulted tent. A pavilion as domed cavity. But point being, Cuba. And guess what? The word Cuba. Okay? It says large vaulted tent. And when you look at the Isle of Cuba, it being the largest island of the West Indies, all right, of the Caribbean islands, right? You can clearly see that. That's a fact. It's shaped in a form of a tent when you really look at it, which goes back to the word Cuba, large vaulted tent. Okay? So this is just giving you further edification on them. Now, also too, I want to touch on another thing, because even the word Taino is Hebrew. I might have to say that for another time, but I do want to touch on this. You know, our brothers from the Isle of Puerto Rico like to use the word Boricua, right? Now, let's go ahead and go to that, all right? I'm going to show you that Boricua, all right, the so-called indigenous brothers and sisters and the descendants thereof from the Isle of Puerto Rico use this word not even knowing that it's Hebrew, all right? Now, I'm going to go to Wictionary, all right? So Boricua, right? Chiefly Puerto Rican. Etymology from Spanish Boricua, from Taino Boriqui, Boricui, all right? So this is the name of, this is where it originally comes from the Taino, all right? In particular, the Tainos of the Isle of Puerto Rico. Now, understanding that the tribe of Ephraim derives, or the indigenous Puerto Ricans, all right, the Taino Indians and Arawak Indians of that island, all right, understanding that they are the tribe of Ephraim, let's go ahead and go into this word right here, all right? So this is 2 Chronicles 28:12, all right? It's dealing with the time of the kings, you know, in this particular chapter and verse in the book of Chronicles. Then certain heads of the children of Ephraim, Azariah the son of Johanna, Berechiah, all right, the son of Meshelemeth, and Jehezekiah, the son of Shalom, and Manasseh the son of Hedaliah, stood against them that came from the war. Now, let's go ahead and go into the Strong's Concordance, and let's deal with the word Berechiah. All right. Go to Tools, Slakia. Let's go to Tools real quick. So this is talking about the house of Ephraim, all right? So let's go down here, because the word Boricua, all right, this word Boricua, which the Tainos use to identify their brothers, all right, is in fact Hebrew, broken Hebrew, no different than the word Cuba is broken Hebrew, Cuba, all right? Same thing with this, dealing with Boricua. Now, Berechiah, from the house of Ephraim. Let's go ahead and go to this. This is Strong's H1296. I'll play that so y'all can hear the proper pronunciation.
Strong's H1296. Berechiah.
So watch this.
And the form.
All right. Berechiah. All right. So is breakdown Barakaya. Barakaya. All right. That's the original pronunciation at the Yiddish. Barakaya. All right. Which means what? Yahweh's blessed. So it means Yahweh Barakya. All right. When you deal with the ancient Hebrew, the Most High's blesses. All right. The Most High's blessing. Barakaya, right, goes right on with the word borikwa or borikoi. All right. Clearly giving you, all right, the understanding that these words, names over there that they use in the Isle of Puerto Rico, like Taino, Boricua, or even Cuba, all right, Cuba, these are all Hebrew words, broken Hebrew words, proving what? That they're Hebrew Israelites, dealing with those aborigines of those particular islands, all right? Okay, so with that being said, I want to go ahead and go right into this lesson, all right? Dealing with Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, the first scripture I'm going to go to is the Genesis 48, okay? Dealing with the time of Joseph, because Joseph is who? This was he's part of the 12 tribes through the lineage of his son, Ephraim and Manasseh, okay? You understand that story with Joseph in Egypt and the 12 brothers. It gives you a basic breakdown. You have a basic breakdown understanding of that. You understand where that story comes from. So, Genesis 48:9. And Joseph said unto his father, They are my sons, whom God had given me in this place. And he said, Bring them, I pray thee, unto me. I will bless them. So, Joseph is bringing forth his sons, all right, speaking of Ephraim and Manasseh, to Israel, okay? So, verse 10. Now the eyes of Israel were dimmed for age, so that he could not see. He brought them near unto him, and he kissed them and embraced him. So he embraced the sons, speaking of Ephraim and Manasseh, right? So, verse 11. And Israel said unto Joseph, and he was blind, mind you. And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God hath showed me also thy seed. So showed his sons, right, to him. And Joseph brought them out from between his knees. And he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim. So here's the key point. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand, towards Israel's left hand. So Israel, so make it up in your mind that where I'm positioned at, I'm Joseph. He had Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel, right? Jacob / Israel's left hand. If he was facing towards me, the way the camera is, it would be towards the left, all right, of his left side. Whereas it would be towards my right hand, right? With his right hand, speaking of Joseph, giving you an illustration. So, and Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel's left hand, like so. And Manasseh in his left hand towards Israel's right hand. So Manasseh was on the left hand side right here of Joseph, but on the opposite end, on the right hand side of Israel. Okay, so and brought them both brought them near unto him. Israel stretched out his right hand, mind you, he's blind. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head. So he stretched, so speaking of Israel, from his position, he stretched out his right hand, which would be on this side, which the right hand side would be from the position of Joseph would be right here. He stretched out his right hand towards Ephraim's, towards Ephraim. Slakia. Let me read that again. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head. So he stretched out his right hand from there towards his right hand towards Israel, towards Joseph's right hand, where Ephraim was at, and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, right? Speaking of the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head. So he took his left hand from this side to the left hand side of Joseph, who had Manasseh in his left hand. Okay. Manasseh's head guiding his hands wittingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. He blessed Joseph and said, God before my father Abraham and Isaac did walk thee, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them. In the name of the fathers Abraham and Isaac, let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So when you deal with that, he put the names, of course, basically including them amongst the number of the 12. Speaking of Ephraim and Manasseh, right, through the line of Joseph, who was son of Israel. Okay, so it said, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Okay, speaking of Ephraim and Manasseh, they would grow as a multitude in the earth, meaning that they would be very plentiful and very fruitful in the earth in terms of the size, the mass size of their tribe. Verse 17, and when Joseph saw his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, because remember, Ephraim's right here, Manasseh's right here on the side of Joseph. Israel laid his right hand upon Ephraim's right hand, and his left hand upon, Joseph's left hand, where Manasseh was at. Okay, and that was symbolic because of the blessing that he was going to give to Ephraim, as I read on. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head onto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. So it said, put thy right hand upon his head, right? Because he was trying to have the eldest brother be blessed first, right? So when it said in reading on, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn, put thy right hand upon his head. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall be a great people. He also shall be a people, become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. So dealing with that, just like how Jacob got the birthright over Esau, even though Esau was the firstborn, it was already predestined that Jacob would get the blessing, right? So the same thing with Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim would get the blessing over Manasseh, although Manasseh, right, had the blessing, right, and was going to receive even though Manasseh was the firstborn, Ephraim was the younger, and Ephraim was able to get the blessing over Manasseh. Although Ephraim and Manasseh will both be great tribes, Ephraim will be a greater tribe than Manasseh. All right, and that's the reason why. So, and just to read that last part, but truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Okay, so just giving you an understanding, they were added into the portion of Israel through Joseph. So, in understanding this, right, when you deal with Joseph, whenever you read Joseph in the scriptures, it includes Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay. So I want to go into some history Lost Tribes and Promised Land, The Origins of American Racism by Ronald Saunders, all right? This is a well-known book. And I just want to coincide with Genesis 48 and also to coincide who Ephraim and Manasseh are, right? Let me go ahead and go into this, all right? It's page 364 in its Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, right? A lost tribe discovered in New York, or Lost Tribes and Promised Land. But yeah, so let's go ahead and go to this paragraph, all right? Actually, yeah, I'm gonna go there, right? Waving a banner high, because remember, in the tribe of Reuben breakdown, I showed that this proves that when you read from 64 to 65, this proves the tribe of Reuben being the so-called Seminole Indians who live on the Florida Peninsula, okay? So I'm gonna read this part. Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to a signal, the two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared bearing three men and a woman, all of them Indians, to the place where Francisco and Montesinos, those two Spanish individuals, were standing at Spanish Edomites, I might add, at the water's edge. The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montesinos could not understand, although he could perceive that he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montesino, Odone Ahad, or Slakia, went over to Montesino and, to his utter astonishment, said, Shema Yisrael, Adeno, Elohinu, Odone Ahad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. All right, so this is Montesino's recollection of what was going on over there with the Native Americans down there in Florida, right? Because also too, you got to remember, Spain was going after the Seminole Indians and trying to take over that land, all right? But yeah, so it says they had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism. So this is the part where it goes into Ephraim and Manasseh dealing with the tribe of Reuben, dealing with Joseph, right? So let's go ahead and read this part of the this paragraph, right? A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montesinos, whose fluency in it is almost as perplexing to the reader of his narrative as that of his three mysterious new companions. They told him that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben. Speaking of the Seminole Indians, right? So you see, they're on the Florida Peninsula, all right? There's some information you can go look up for yourself as well. They themselves are the tribe of Reuben, and that the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby. All right? That the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby. So, what would that be speaking on? Well, it would be speaking on the tribe of Joseph being Ephraim and Manasseh, living on islands nearby, off the Florida Peninsula. Here you have Cuba on the left-hand side, and you have Ephraim, all right, or it's like Puerto Rico on the right-hand side. And this is where this is where you can understand the difference between Manasseh and Ephraim, or how you can differentiate Cuba, or the so-called Cubans and the Puerto Ricans, the Cubans being the tribe of Manasseh, Ephraim, Puerto Ricans being the tribe of Ephraim, right? Because there might be a confusion on that, right? So we understand that Joseph is identified as being, the tribe of Joseph being both Ephraim and Manasseh lived on an island nearby, according to the Seminoles, who are the tribe of Reuben, right? That they lived on an island nearby. Now, with Cuba and Puerto Rico, right? This is where we might have to go right back into Genesis 48. All right, dealing with the two sons. And like I said, you see Ephraim is on the right-hand side, Manasseh, Puerto Rico is on the right-hand side, Cuba is on the left-hand side from where we're facing, right? So let's deal with this, right? Let's go back into this, Genesis 48. And Israel stretched out his right hand, to bless Joseph's children, stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hands wittingly. For Manasseh was the firstborn, and he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers and Abraham, Isaac did walk, the God which fed me all my life long unto this day. But like it says, he stretched out his right hand to Ephraim's head, and then stretched out his left hand upon Manasseh's head. Now you see this right here. You see Puerto Rico is on the right-hand side of the Caribbean islands, far right-hand side. Of course, you have the Virgin Islands, Bahamas, and whatnot. But Puerto Rico's on the right-hand side, and then you have Cuba, who's on the left-hand side of the Caribbean islands, right? So let's see. Let me go ahead and go right into this. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right, so Genesis 48:17, and when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said unto his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn, put right hand upon his head. So, of course, dealing with that situation, he was upset. But the point, is that Israel did, our forefather did that, dealing with Israel, right? But he did that symbolically because Ephraim, being the so-called Puerto Ricans of today, would be greater than the tribe of Manasseh, right? Who are the so-called Cubans. Although the tribe of Manasseh would be a great people, Ephraim would be the better of the two brothers. Although Manasseh was the elder brother, all right. And you can see that Puerto Rico, all right, where Ephraim is on the right-hand side of the Caribbean islands. Cuba is on the left-hand side, all right, showing you that these two are the sons of Joseph. These two will be in Puerto Rico and Cuba, respectively. Cuba being the tribe of Manasseh on the left-hand side, Puerto Rico being the tribe of Ephraim on the right-hand side. Just giving you an edification on that. So, Genesis, the 49th chapter, and the 22nd verse. Joseph, speaking of Ephraim and Manasseh, right, is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. So, when you deal with this, Joseph is a fruitful bow, right? And this is speaking on who? Speaking on the children of Joseph, both Ephraim and Manasseh, like it said even in Genesis, the 48th chapter. 49th chapter is the end-time prophecy of where they be at and who they would be in these last days. Ephraim being the so-called Puerto Ricans, Manasseh being the so-called Cubans, the indigenous aborigines of Puerto Rico and Cuba, all right? Just to give you an understanding, they'd be fruitful. They would produce a lot of children. They would be very reproductive, all right? Even a fruitful bow by a well. And where's that well? That well is speaking on the location where they be at, which is being the Caribbean islands, okay? Whose branches run over the wall. So when it says whose branches run over the wall, in other words, that seed and that fruitful bowl would spread all throughout the earth. They be a great multitude, all right, of the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. Not just the Puerto Ricans and Cubans that are here, but as well as the people, all right, that descend from that tribe that's all scattered all throughout the earth, even in these last days. So, dealing with Ephraim and Manasseh, going into Joseph, whose branches run over the wall, the archers have surely grieved him and shot at him. Verse 23, the archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. So who is it speaking on right here? The archers and the ones that have sorely shot at them and hated them. This is speaking on the Spanish Inquisition. All right, this is speaking on those devils over there in Spain who were ran by the Edomites, so-called white men, who came over here as a Spanish Inquisition under the authority of King Ferdinand and Isabella, who established Christopher Columbus, all right, to sail over here. Christopher Columbus, by the way, knowing that the 10 tribes of Israel were over here, according to biblical prophecy.
At the moment, there are only two ways of reaching it. By sea, sailing around the African continent. The journey takes a year. Or by land. But the Turks have closed this route to all Christians. There is a third way. By sailing west across the ocean sea.
The distance is unknown. It's said to be infinite.
Superstition. I believe the Indies are no more than 750 leagues west of the Canary Islands.
How can you be so certain?
The calculations of Toscanelli, Marin de Tir, Esdras.
Esdras is a Jew.
So what's worse?
2 minutes, and already you're a dead man.
For telling the truth?
Yes. We are burning people for less.
Sent his men over here so that, you know what I'm saying, so that they can go and take the resources and take the children of Israel into bondage, all right, and take their natural resources and enslave them, all right. And this is something that happened. And when you read in history, they were savagely brutal towards the children of Ephraim and Manasseh, savagely brutal to the whole 10 tribes, but mainly speaking on the Spanish Inquisition coming to the Caribbean islands. And the island that they first went to was the Isle of Puerto Rico. So, in Genesis 49 and 23, and it says, the archers have surely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. Speaking of Joseph, right? When you deal with the brothers and sisters from the Isle of Puerto Rico and Cuba, all right, dealing with the sons of Joseph, the tribe of Ephraim, which is the Puerto Ricans, and Manasseh, the so-called Cubans, all right, the indigenous, you know, Arawak and Taínos of those lands. And of course, all the Caribbean islands were attacked by the Spanish Inquisition that shot at them and hated them. But focusing on Puerto Rico and Cuba, they were all put into captivity and they were exploited, you know, of all the resources in their land, in their own land. And of course, when you deal with the word Puerto Rico, it means, it's for Spanish, rich port, right? Which is basically a name for exploitation for the land of what we now know as Puerto Rico, that was conquered by the Spanish Inquisition originally, and then of course, you know, the name was put on it for Puerto Rico, which means rich port. So I want to go ahead and go into this, all right, because that when it says the archers have surely grieved him and hated him, that definitely was true, because these same people were made all throughout those islands, but including the Isle of Cuba and Puerto Rico. They were forced to dig up their own gold and silver mines, forced to dig up their own resources and give it to the Inquisition as a tribute, right? And that's what they did. As well as they were also exported over here, or exported over to Spain, Seville, all right, which is the capital of Spain, as slaves. All right. So going into Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. All right. And I'm going to bring out the sources to back up the scriptures, you know what I'm saying, in its totality. So Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, in verse 15, because mainly the reason why our people were conquered and were taken over was because of the idolatry, because of Joseph and Ephraim, Joseph dealing with the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh's idolatry, as well as all the 12 tribes, but focusing on them. So it says, but if thou, Deuteronomy 28:15, but if thou shalt come to pass, thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. So skipping down to verse 28, this also includes the tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim, the so-called Puerto Ricans and Cubans. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. And Egypt is representing America, representing Esau in his different countries as well. All right, now not just America, but just everywhere they would where there'd be bondage for the Israelites, because that's where the Israelites were born in. They're born in the bondage in Egypt. In the modern day, Egypt is America, ruled by the so-called white man. All right, as well as the other European nations. So this includes Spain and Portugal as well. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, that thou shalt see it no more again, see the land no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and go into this first book, From Columbus to Castro, the History of the Caribbean. And go to page 31. Okay, we'll go to page 31 and 32. Okay, and also too, just real quick, and the reason why the Puerto Ricans and Cubans and all them others, Latinos or so-called Hispanics, or those particular areas speak Spanish, is because of the Inquisition, is because the conquistadors later. All right, so I'm gonna just bring this out. Deuteronomy 28 and 48, right, 47, 48. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with the gladness of heart in the abundance of all things, because the northern kingdom, dealing with Ephraim and Manasseh and the rest of the 10 tribes, they went into idolatry. All right. And we know that dealing with the Puerto Ricans and Cubans, you know, they worship white Jesus. They worship, a lot of them are into Roman Catholicism. All right. So, and they worship a lot of different deities. They're into other things that are not attributed to this holy scriptures, the Bible, and their heritage of being Israelites. And this, so verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and nakedness, in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, right? And the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the ends of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongues thou shalt not understand. Okay? Yeah, in that same tongue were the Spanish. All right, Spanish Inquisition, who forced Spanish on the so-called Puerto Ricans and Cubans. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go to this right here. All right, in the book Columbus to Castro, I'm going to go to page 31. Okay. So just understanding that they all went into captivity and slavery along with the so-called blacks, Haitians, and West Indians and Jamaicans, all right? Just at a different time. So page 31, all right? White capital, colored labor. White capital and colored labor. As the years went by, Columbus more and more adopted the view the riches of West Indies lay in their Indian population. He saw in the cannibalism of the Caribs a pretext for their enslavement. He described them as wild people fit for any work, well proportionate and very intelligent, and who, when they got rid of their cruel habits to which they have been a custom will be better than any other kind of slaves. On his third voyage in 1498, he shipped 600 Indians back to Spain. The slave trade in the Caribbean thus began as outward and not inward cargoes, taking the form of Indians transported from the West Indies to Spain, rather than Negroes transported from West Africa to Caribbean. All right, so there was a lot of export of them being shipped to Spain, more so than Negroes being transported to the Caribbean islands from the west coast of Africa. We'll read the rest in this page 32, continuing on. In the meantime, however, the Pope had enjoyed on the Spanish sovereigns the duty of treating the Indians kindly and converting them to Catholicism. It's the reason why you Puerto Ricans and you Cubans, all right, are into Catholicism, all right, because of the conquest that was made, the Inquisition that was made back in 1492, going all the way up to today, all right. It's the reason why you speak Spanish and the reason why you believe in Catholicism. Which in that kindly mad nonsense is baloney. They brutally, savagely killed those people, and we're gonna go into that. I'm gonna go into that further in another book in this particular segment. The sovereigns thereupon issued a royal decree whereby those Indians who accepted Spanish sovereignty and submitted to it without resistance were considered subjects of the crown, and as such could not be reduced to slavery. The decree left the road open to enslavement of those who resisted. The legal basis for slavery became the infamous requisition read out by a notary to natives who did not understand Spanish. The others were to be treated as free men and employed for wages. So you had them that were transported over there as slaves unless they were to accept Roman Catholicism, because that was the whole objective of the Roman Catholic Church at the time, dealing with Esau, all right? So let me go ahead and go into this book, American Indians, okay, by William Lorenz Katz. So that said, let me go to this right here. It began with Columbus, page 27. The Christopher Columbus, whose unique seamanship and courage had opened the Americas to European penetration, also began the transatlantic slave trade, right? So Christopher Columbus began the transatlantic slave trade, which also included the Negroes later on, but mainly it was the Native Americans of the Caribbean islands, okay, including you so-called Puerto Ricans and Cubans, all right, and the descendants thereof. He started by shipping 10 chained Arawak men and women to Seville, Spain. In 1498, he wrote enthusiastically to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella about the business possibilities. From here, in the name of the Blessed Trinity, we can send all the slaves that can be sold. When he loaded 1,100 Taino men and women abroad for Spanish ships, the crowding and stormy Atlantic crossings took a fearful toll. Only 300 survived. But Columbus in Spain had decided to continue the profitable slave trade from the Americas. Seville became the slave capital of Spain. Shows you how much they give a damn about you so-called Hispanics from that region and just in general. All right. So let's go ahead and go into this book, The Conquest of the New World. All right. And actually, with that being said, I'm going to bring out some scriptures, because with this, okay, with this, you have different. So yeah, American Holocaust by David E. Stenner. And I'm going to bring out some scriptures to coincide with all this, because our people have been have been rebellious to the Most High, right? Dealing with the tribe of dealing with the sons of Joseph, the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh, which trickle down to the rest of the 10 tribes for their idolatrous worship. All right, which caused them to err, and which caused provoked the Most High to send Esau, the so-called white man, after us in the latter days. All right, and we're in the last days as we speak right now. So let's go ahead and go to Hosea, the book of Hosea, real quick. So the book of Hosea, chapter 4, verse 17. Slaki, yeah, 4 verse 17. And it says, Ephraim is joined to idols, let him alone. Yeah, Ephraim is joined to idols. All right, and this is the problem with the so-called Cubans and Puerto Ricans in particular, because, like we said, they worship Roman Catholicism, you know, and they love the so-called white men and the so-called white Jesus that they create in these last days. So Hosea 8 and 11. All right. Because Ephraim have made many altars to sin, altars shall be unto him to sin, and have written to him the great things of my law, but they were counted as a strange thing. That's where you go into them going into the Canaanite religion and doctrine. All right. You know, having a form of godliness, you know what I'm saying, with the Taino and Arawak, they had certain forms of godliness dealing with certain things with the scriptures, but they did not keep the laws fully, and they became heathens, worshiping idols and all this other stuff, right? So, moving on, let's go to Hosea 7 and 1. When I would have healed Israel, speaking of the 10 tribes, and the head tribe being Ephraim and his older brother Manasseh, these so-called Puerto Ricans and Cubans, then the iniquity of Ephraim was discovered in the wickedness of Samaria, for they committed falsehood, and the thief, the Spaniards, Esau, cometh in, and the troop of robbers spoileth without. And that's exactly what happened. The troop of robbers spoileth without. Okay? And shot and destroyed our people. And all right? Down there in Cuba and Puerto Rico and throughout the whole West Indian Islands. Let's see what. Yeah, so going into Hosea 9 and 13, and this is where I'm going to go into the book American Holocaust. Hosea 9, chapter 9, verse 11. All right. And Ephraim, as for Ephraim, their glory shall fly away like a bird from the birth, and from the womb, and from the conception. Though they bring up their children, yet I will bereave them, that there shall not be a man left, yea, woe also to them that when I depart from them. Ephraim, as I saw Tyrus, is planted in a pleasant place, right? So dealing with the so-called Puerto Ricans, right? Because that's Ephraim, dealing with also too Manasseh. I mean, they're planted in a beautiful place. All right. Let's see. Let's pull up the map again. All right. All right. They're planted in a beautiful place. And this is how you know this is talking about in these last days. All right. All right. So, yeah, Ephraim and as well as Manasseh are planted in a beautiful place. You know, the Caribbean islands are notorious for being beautiful, especially when you do Puerto Rico and Cuba. All right. Okay, they're planted in a beautiful place, right? But Ephraim shall bring forth his children to the murderer. And who's that murderer? All right. The murderer is the Spanish Inquisition, as you see in this video. I mean, it's like as you see in this this opening cover of the American Holocaust. All right. So, and it says, all their wickedness in Gilgal, for that there I hated them for the wickedness of their doings. I will drive them out of my house, and I will love them no more. All the princes are revolters. Ephraim is smitten, their root is dried up, and they shall bear no fruit, though they bring forth. Yet I will slay even the beloved fruit of their womb. Right? So, she said that he'll slay the beloved fruit of their womb. And the Lord did that by what? Allowing, all right, Esau to come in and slaughter our brothers and sisters ruthlessly. Okay? Actually, let me go ahead and bring this out in an American Holocaust. Let me go to page 147. All right? Give you a clear illustration of this. Okay? So, bear with me. So yeah, right here, genocide, page 147. All right, now I'm gonna show to page 140. Page 147 to 154. Right. So it said, Ephraim is smitten, their root is dried up, they shall bear no fruit. Yea, even though they bring forth, yet will I slay them, even the beloved fruit of their womb. For my God will cast them away, because they did not hearken unto him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations. Basically enslaved, right? Put into captivity, like I was just reading. All right, so you see this. You see them being hung in their fire, getting burnt alive, as well as seeing their children getting smashed into pieces, and while they watch being hung and getting burnt alive, getting fed to dogs, right? Let me bring out another scripture to coincide with that. Let's go ahead and go to Hosea chapter 13. All right. Let's go to Hosea chapter 13. All right. In verse 14. All right. Because it says, it reiterates it again. So, Hosea 13 and 12, the iniquity of Ephraim is bound up. His sin is hid. The sorrows of a travailing woman shall come upon him. Right? Shall come upon him. He is an unwise son, for he should not stay long in the place of the breaking forth of children. I will ransom them from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death, O death. I'll redeem them from death, O death. I will be thy plagues. O grave will be thy destruction. Repentance shall be hid from my eyes. All right. Verse 15, though he be fruitful among his brethren, east wind shall come, and the wind of the Lord shall come up from the wilderness, and his springs shall become dry, and his fountain shall be dried up. He shall spoil the treasure of all the pleasant vessels. And guess who that's talking about? It's talking about the Spanish Inquisition. Because what did they do? They came and they spoiled Ephraim, Manasseh. They spoiled the Arawak and the Taínos, and that's why you have the rich port, which is Puerto Rico today. All right. And they came from an east wind from the east. All right, and conquered them. So reading on, and just so you can see how they're killing the young ones, killing the little babies, feeding the babies to dogs and whatnot, and slaughtering our people. So watch this, verse 16. Samaria shall become desolate, for Samaria is representative of Ephraim, in particular the heads of Ephraim, shall become desolate, for she have rebelled against her God. They shall fall by the sword. Right? And you seeing Ephraim falling by the sword right here. Okay? Shall fall by the sword. Their infants shall be dashed into pieces, and their women with child shall be ripped up. And what do you see going on right here? Okay? You seeing guys getting their hand chopped off? You seeing the women getting burnt along with the men, as well as the children getting dashed to pieces and torn apart? You clearly see this, and you seeing them throwing them in the little pit, throwing the dead bodies in the pit. See them getting burnt alive by the Spaniards. See the cacique getting choked, getting hung, lynched. See them getting burnt alive. Hell, I even read these little inserts right here. All right, which further proves the point. So it says, and it's just crazy because you can clearly see this verbatim. The Spaniards took babies from their mother's breasts, grabbing them by the feet and smashing their heads against rocks. And what does the scripture say that what would happen? Hosea 13:16, Samaria shall become desolate for she hath rebelled against her God. They shall fall, right, by the sword, and their infants shall be dashed in pieces, and their women with child shall be ripped up. The Spaniards took babies from their mother's breast, grabbing them by the feet and smashing their heads against rocks. Straight out the scriptures, man. What would happen to our people? They built a long gibbet low enough for the toes to touch the ground and prevent strangling, and hang 13 natives at a time in honor of Christ our Savior and the 12 apostles. Then the straw was wrapped around their torn bodies, and they were burnt alive. All right, as the Spaniards went with their war dogs, hunting down Indian men and women, and happened with a sick Indian woman who could not escape from the dogs, sought avoid being torn apart by them. In this fashion, she took a cord and tied her young child to her leg, and then she hung herself from a beam. But the dogs came and tore the child apart before the creature expired. However, in a furor, baptized it. All right, see that? See, this is straight out the scriptures, man. So let's read this part. The Spanish treated the Indians with such rigor and inhumanity that they seemed the very ministers of hell, driving them day and night with beatings, kicks, lashes, blows, calling them no sweeter names than dogs. All right. So, and that's pretty much the point. Just going into that, this is straight out the scriptures. We just read it that the woman with child would get her baby torn out of her womb. She'd get killed. Her babies would get dashed into pieces. And it says that they called these Spaniards, these so-called white men, the very ministers of hell. That's why we call them the devil. All right. But this is just giving you a clear history of their oppression and their enslavement and slavery. Okay. Hosea 7:8. Ephraim, he hath mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned. So dealing with the tribe of Ephraim, dealing with the so-called Puerto Ricans, and this also includes the tribe of Manasseh. All right, as well. Those two tribes in particular, they have mixed themselves among the people. And And yes, it has. And you can, when you look at the other northern kingdoms, it also applies. But Ephraim and Manasseh, the so-called indigenous, indigenous and descendants of the Isle of Puerto Rico and of Cuba, the descendants of the indigenous people, and the Arawak Taino of those two islands, this applies. All right. So when you deal with this, right? When it says Ephraim he has mixed himself among the people, Ephraim is a cake non-term. It goes into the fact that Ephraim, Manasseh, all right, have mixed in with the other nations, all right, intermingled with them. You know, our women have intermingled with the other nations, all right, in particular during the time of slavery, during the time when they were being put into captivity. They were forced to sleep with, you know, the so-called white Spaniards that came over there and conquered that land. And also too, the men in particular, and this is just throughout history, but in particular that time in history during their slavery, their enslavement, they were taken into taken into captive. They've also slept with the other nation's women. And what happens, in particular, the so-called, you know, Spanish women, all right, of Spain. And what happened was that and a lot of them have became lighter complected because throughout time they mixed with them, they mixed with their women, and they started becoming more lighter. All right. So that's the truth on that. Now, when it says Ephraim is a cake not turned, let's go ahead and give a physical illustration. Now, I'm using the pancake as a good illustration. So when this means a cake not turned, right? It's basically going into this, right, where one side of the pancake, right, pancake or a cake, if you don't cook one side, that side is going to look a little lighter. It's going to be brownish, but it's still going to be lighter brown. All right. So you see that. So when you see it burnt, all right, on the other side, cooked, it's going to look like this. Okay. And a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of so-called Cubans and Puerto Ricans, they all are lighter complected, a lot of them. But then you have ones that are darker complected or copper complected or light brown / reddish brown. All right. Let's see. Uncooked. Let's see. Yeah, pancakes well done. You see that some of them look like this color. Okay. And that's that breakdown and metaphor of that when it says Ephraim is a cake not turned in that last little part. And it's all due to the mixing of the other with the other nations. Now, doesn't mean that you can't produce a light-skinned child with two dark-skinned children. That happens a lot. But they weren't as light or complected as they are now when they were going back before they were taken over by the Inquisition of Spain by Christopher Columbus and the European penetration that came after. All right. So just show you different pictures of Puerto Ricans. Right. And I'm showing the ones that are our brothers and sisters. Right. Some of them look a little darker. Okay. Let's see. Some of them look light. You know, they all have different different shades. A lot of them are lighter complected. All right. You know, and of course, don't ignore the ones that, you know, the white people that's over there in Puerto Rico. But you got, you know, this family right here. You know what I'm saying? Lighter complected. This family right here is a little darker. All right. Same with the Cubans. All right. Same thing going on. All right. See that? I'm trying to see if there's another picture. You know, definitely our people right here. So, yeah, just giving you a breakdown and understanding on Hosea 7 and 8 when it applies to Ephraim and Manasseh. So Genesis 49 and 25, even by the God of thy father who shall help thee, and by the Almighty who shall bless thee, with the blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb. So even though when you deal with that's like the Spanish Inquisition dealing with the Spaniards, the Christopher Columbus, slaughtering a large amount of Taino and Arawak Indians from Cuba to Puerto Rico, or Puerto Rico to Cuba, the Lord still saw fit, even with all those slaughterings and decimation of their population, saw fit that they would survive and reproduce at a mass rate. Just like it says, that's the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh as well. Okay. Who shall help thee by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above. And it says, blessings of the deep that lieth under. That's talking about the rich resources and fruits that they have down there, which I'm going to get into. Blessings of the breast and of the womb, and then being able to reproduce. All right. And of course, the things from the deep, all right, and things on the land that they have, all right. Verse 26, the blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. So dealing with Ephraim and Manasseh, dealing with Joseph in particular, their progenitor, all right, you know, prevailed even more so than the other brothers and the forefathers, because he was a second in command in position of Egypt at the time, all right, which he used to help his father and his brothers eventually down the line in that story, all right. And as it says, the blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crowned head of him that was separate from his brethren. So, you know, Joseph was crowned second in command of Egypt at the time, going all the way back. So also too, when it says separate, you know, he was separate from his brethren. He was separate, but he ended up coming back with his brethren, and Ephraim and Manasseh being included in the fold through his lineage, because he also came from the lineage of Jacob / Israel. All right. Real quick, I want to bring out something, First Chronicles, kind of going into that just real quick, because one thing you have to understand is that Ephraim is the head tribe of the Northern Kingdom. Okay. Speaking of the so-called Puerto Ricans of today, and Ephraim in general as a whole, as a tribe. Let me go ahead and go to the book of Chronicles. First Chronicles chapter 12, actually chapter 5, Slakia. First Chronicles chapter 5 verse 1. For now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was firstborn, for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. But the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. So his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the sons of Israel. So what does that mean? That means that, you know, they, just like their father Joseph, speaking of Ephraim and Manasseh, which are the sons of Joseph in particular, but them inheriting that blessing, that birthright, Joseph prevailed over his brethren, even more so than the patriarchs, because of his high rank and rulership in Egypt, and the things he did to utilize that to help further, to help his brothers and his father, all right, which is our patriarchs, okay? And the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright, for Judah prevailed above his brethren, and of him came the chief ruler, but the birthright was Joseph's, all right? So that's just giving you an understanding of that birthright aspect, and them being blessed, speaking with Ephraim, being passed down to Joseph, coinciding with Genesis 49 and 26, okay? The blessing, and I'll read it again, just Genesis 49:26, the blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crowned head of him that was separate from his brethren. So that includes Ephraim and Manasseh, because they came from the lineage of Joseph, who had that blessing. So let's go ahead in Deuteronomy 33 and 13, and it reads, Joseph, he said, bless of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, and for the deep that coucheth beneath. So what is it speaking on? This is speaking on the great blessings that be in the land of Puerto Rico and in the land of Cuba. All right, dealing with Ephraim being the indigenous Puerto Ricans, and Manasseh being the indigenous Cubans, right? So it says, Joseph, he said, bless of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, and for the deep that coucheth beneath. So this is speaking on the underwater water springs, all right, that's under both the land of Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, this is speaking on the precious things like the fruits and whatnot, as the scriptures, as I read on, the different things that are precious over there. And it says that things are slacky, and it says things of heaven, looking at the constellation when you're over there. It has that land has a lot of great and precious things. All right. Also too, it has what they call the coqui, which it has a certain type of quirking sound. All right, that's very distinct from all of the frogs. And even if you take that frog off that island, it would die. All right, so that particular frog dealing with coqui in the Isle of Puerto Rico, that's a precious thing that's to behold over there. So going into the coqui, like I mentioned, this is one of the precious things that's over there in Puerto Rico. All right, and so I just want to play this little clip of this unique frog that's over there. Just adding to the point. So as I read on, verse 14, for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon. And what are those precious things? Going into what I was just speaking on, the coqui, the different animals, the fruits, all right, the different springs, as well as, like it's talking about the precious fruits. There's a lot of different exotic fruits, like the papaya, if I'm saying it right, pineapple, all right, bananas, all right, avocados. A lot of things are produced over there in both the Isle of Cuba and Puerto Rico, all right, dealing with Ephraim and Manasseh. So I want to help illustrate what it says in Deuteronomy 33 and 14 about the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh, who are the so-called Puerto Ricans and Cubans, the indigenous Puerto Ricans and Cubans of today in their lands, and the exotic fruits that they produce. And I want to illustrate that. All right, these are, in the abundance and blessings of the fruits that they have. So let me go ahead and play this video of Puerto Rico, and then I will do of Cuba after. So moving.
Food is everywhere in Puerto Rico. There are roadside truck stops where menu offerings include such hearty, stick-to-the-ribs working man's dishes as...
So transitioning to Cuba and their exotic fruits. So, skipping down, verse 15, and for the chief things of the ancient mountains, and for the precious things of the lasting hills. When you deal with Puerto Rico and Cuba, Puerto Rico is 3,000 miles above sea level. has high hills above the sea level. Cuba, if I'm not mistaken, is 6,000 feet above sea level. All right. So, and it also says, and for the chief things of the ancient mountains. All right. So also too, you also have different artifacts as well, confirming who these people are according to the scriptures, being from the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh, being from the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. So I just wanted to deal with the mountain ranges that I was speaking on. So this is Cordillera Central in Puerto Rico. The range is the main mountain range in Puerto Rico. The range crosses the island from west to east and divides the island into northern and southern coastal plains. The elevation is 4,390 feet. All right. So just wanted to give you quick note on that. Also, too, the Sierra Maestra in Cuba, right, the Sierra Maestra is a mountain range that runs westward across the south of the old Oriente province in southeast Cuba, rising abruptly from the coast. Sierra Maestra itself is located mainly in Santiago de Cuba province and in Granma province. Some view it as a series of connecting ranges: Vela, Santa Catalina, Quemado, Grande, Dana Marina, which joins with other extending to the west. The Sierra Maestra is the highest area of Cuba. Okay, at 100 Sierra Maestra's highest area of Cuba. It is rich in minerals, especially copper, manganese, chromium, and iron. At 1,974 meters, which is 6,474 feet, Pico Turquino is the highest mountain range, is the range highest point. Okay, so just giving you an illustration of that verse. So I wanted to touch on this, dealing with that verse in Deuteronomy 33 and 15. All right, 800 ancient stones with Hebrew writing in Puerto Rico authenticated. A remnant. All right, now you see this this Ephraimite right here, this Ephraimite brother showing this stone, showing Paleo Hebrew. A remnant of ancient stones, 2,800 or 20 of 800, made its way halfway across the world, solving a 3,500-year-old mystery. What did these stones whisper about the pre-Colombian indigenous people of the island of Puerto Rico? After rigorous academic study, anthropologists, historians, academics, and millions of Puerto Ricans finally have scientific evidence that reveals the language of the stones. Growing up in the mountains of Puerto Rico, my grandfather told me about some very unique stones which were part of our ancient Taino Indian history. These are rare stones were in the care of our greatest principal chiefs, Cacique Aguebana, who, when Columbus stumbled across our Taino people in 1492, was the principal chief of my home island of Broquin. Okay. So, this is the chief right here, and then, the ancient stones. So it's just giving more edification and understanding that, the ancient things that are in Isle of Puerto Rico as well as Cuba, dealing with the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. So Deuteronomy 33 and 16, and for the precious things of the earth and the fullness thereof, and for the good will of him that dwelt in the bush, let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph and upon the top head of him that was separated from his brethren. Speaking of who? Ephraim and Manasseh. All right, these are the blessed things that they have, the abundance of natural resources that they have in those particular islands, even from to the air, to the fruits that's produced, to the different bushes and trees that are over there, the different wildlife, the fishes in the sea. All right, they're blessed with a great abundance of natural wealth. All right, to the point where you can actually live off of that land. All right, that's how good that land is. That's how good that land has it. Okay. And, speaking of both of those isles, Cuba and Puerto Rico. All right. So, verse 17, his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorn. Now, I want to stop there in that verse. The horns of unicorn. The horns represents power, right? A pushing force, right? So, the horns of unicorns, right? The firstlings of his bullock. Young bull. Right? And his horns like the horns of unicorn, representing power. That unicorn speaking on the rhinoceros. When you go into the ancient definition of what that particular animal is, speaking of a unicorn, is speaking on a rhinoceros. All right. So continuing on, and with them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. Right, so the head chief men of that particular tribe of Ephraim as well as Manasseh help push the children of Israel, because it says, and with them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. Pushing who? The 10 tribes of Israel to the ends of the earth. Okay? Speaking on what? Speaking on what was spoken on in 2nd Ezra the 13th chapter 40 to the 45th verse. And for repetition's sake, we'll bring this out. All right? To give you an understanding that that's what that's speaking on. The heads were Ephraim, Manasseh, Ephraim being the head tribe, Manasseh being the close brother. All right? Help push the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom, from the captivity of the Assyrian Empire, selling all the way over here, down from the Horn of Africa, all the way to the Americas, all right, to the land of Osiris. So, 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, in the 40th verse. Those are the 10 tribes which are carried away prisoners of their own, out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, who Salmanasseh, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwell. All right, and that's where that ends of the world is, that land where never mankind dwell. Speaking of this place called Osiris, as I read, verse 42, that they might keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely 1.5 years. The same region is called Osiris. Then shall there be, then dwelt they there until the latter time, now when they shall begin to come. So that's where it's speaking on when it talks about the ends of the world. Reading on in Deuteronomy 33 and 17, his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, his horns are like the horns of unicorn. Because when that speaking of that rhinoceros, the rhinoceros has what, 2 different horns. Ephraim representing the longer horn because it was the greater brother. Manasseh representing a shorter horn. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth. As we read, Osiris, the ends of the earth. Osiris is the Americas today. Okay? And they are the 10,000s of Ephraim. And they are the they are the thousands of Manasseh. So the 10,000 of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh, the head ruling of those particular tribes, all right, help push the northern kingdom over here to the land of the Americas, led them away with power like a bullock, like a so-called rhinoceros or unicorn, as the Bible says. All right. So and that's how we know who the tribe of Ephraim and who the tribe of Manasseh are. Ephraimites being the so-called Puerto Ricans, and Manasseh and the tribe of Manasseh being the so-called Cubans of today, the indigenous brothers and sisters of those particular islands. All right. So with that said, I want to say, Kahala Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai. All right. And this has been another edition, another lesson completed of the 12 tribes of Israel, and I'll be back with the very final one. Okay. So with that being said, I want to say Quam Aparium, which is rise Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim. Quam Manasseh or Manasseh, which is rise Manasseh. All right. And I want to say Kala Yabba Shimei Shai. Much love to you, brothers and sisters in this truth. The priest, prophets, elders sincerely pushing the truth out. With that said, this is Rayabya from God. And I'll be back with another lesson with dealing with the 12 tribes of Israel, the final one. That said, much love and shalom.